Alright, so now we are at the second small arm of Normandy out of this little series that we're making. And for this little segment, I'm going to call in somebody who's a little more of an expert in this field than I am, which is the 1897 Winchester, which is going to be my brother. So I'll let him take it from here.
Hi, this is Garrett with 11 Bang Bang. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite weapons of any war, the shotgun. Specifically, the model 1897. Clear? This weapon has served the Philippine War, World War I, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, and several other smaller conflicts around the world. It doesn't get a lot of credit because it's more of a niche role. Anything over 75 yards with this gun is iffy at best. Now this story starts way back in the 19th century, which is why I'm here, because whereas I couldn't tell you anything about most of the World War II rifles that 11 Bang Bang can tell you about, my area is 19th century, and it just so happens that 1897 falls in the very tail end of that era. Now, what happened was, in 1878, Colt came out with a double-barrel, hammer-fired shotgun that took the West by storm. Everybody had one of these. Doc Holliday used one at the gunfight at the OK Corral. Every stagecoach had one, every wagon, every family. Truly, this could have been the gun that actually won the West, if we were to put it in honest terms. Winchester wanted to keep up. They had just hired a man named John Moses Browning. They had paid him a big amount of money to take their Winchester 1873 frame, which they had already turned into the 1876, beef it up to take a much larger round, to take the 45-70, and make it into a lever action gun that would work, and that gun was just going like crazy. So they said, if you can do that for a 45-70, which is basically the same size as a 410, why can't you take and make us a shotgun that repeats? A lever action repeating shotgun. John Browning told them, well, I can, but I would rather put a pump on it. There was a problem. A company named Spencer already had a pump shotgun out. It wasn't a very good one. It was finicky. Wasn't real popular, but they had the patent on the pump shotgun. So the Winchester, being lever action people, told John Browning, no, just put a lever on it. Well, that's a good thought if you think that it's going to come out looking like the 1886 Winchester. Unfortunately, it doesn't. It comes out looking like the 1887 Winchester shotgun, which is a bulky, round, loads through the breech. You have to open the lever. The lever has a terribly long throw. One of these days we'll do a review on this gun, but it was not that popular. You just can't put a 12 gauge into a lever action and make it work like you would a regular rifle round. So they went back to the drawing board. They said, all right, the patent for Spencer is running out. It hadn't ran out all the way yet. Get to work on something that you can use as a pump action shotgun. Browning went to the drawing board, and in 1893 he came out with a fairly decent shotgun. It has the 1893 Winchester, looks similar to this, except the top is opened much further. The hammer works a little different, the sides are thinner, the barrel's thinner to cut for weight. This gun was designed in the era of smokeless powder, had just came out but was not popular yet, at least not in the civilian market. This gun, this 1893 Winchester, which we don't have one here, was designed to take the pressure curve of black powder. And of course, smokeless powder was on the horizon, but nobody knew how it would blow up. John Browning goes back to the drawing board for another rifle and comes up with the 1894, which is designed from the beginning for smokeless powder. Suddenly, the American commercial market blows up for smokeless powder. Everybody wants that fast-burning, clean, make your gun work reliable kind of round. So Winchester, not having a gun capable of containing and handling this hot, smokeless shotgun shell goes back to John Browning again and says, we've got to do something. This new round's going to blow up the guns that we have out. So he takes the 1893 and goes back to the drawing board one more time. And in the year of 1897, get that, he comes out with the 1897, which is this gun. Now, this particular gun, I know it looks rough. This gun is made in 1907 and it is designated above the serial number D. Nearly all of the firearms that you will see from Winchester that are 1897s will be designated E. But that puts this gun very early. So anyway, this gun hits the civilian market 1897 to 1898, and it goes gangbusters. Everyone that previously, almost everyone that previously had wanted that 1878 Colt double barrel with hammers, suddenly wanted another gun with a hammer. And if you look at it, it kind of resembles, it's a bridge. Not only does this hammer resemble the 1873, 1892 style action of the lever actions, but if you look into the future, this gun is going to slightly resemble something else John Browning would make called the 1911. This gun is the bridge. Now, for the first 3 years, they tinkered with it. 1897, 1898, 1899, there are a few changes in here. A screw here, a pin here, a button there. They never changed the model number. They just changed the letter above the serial number. Serial numbers are located here and here. This gun is not matching. Because it's a takedown, someone has took the front end and replaced it with another. This gun, which is made in 1936, is matching. This gun, which is made in 1911, is matching. As I was saying, for the first 3, plus maybe a few more years, they tinkered with it. As you'll see, this one here and this one here, have the designation E above the serial number. If I can get my cameraman to zoom in, you'll see that on this gun, there is a way to unload the shells by using these 2 buttons on the sides. Let me demonstrate. If I was to take this gun and put a couple shells in there, I would take a button here and a button here, squeeze them both, and spit your shells out without having to rack them through the chamber. This one, which is the 1907 model and is designated D above the serial number, has no buttons. The only way to get the shells out of this one is to go in there with your fingers and manually push both of those slide bars sideways to get or rack them out through the chamber. Now, on a falling hammer gun with slam fire capabilities, that's iffy sometimes. Anyway, let's see what this gun will do. This one's made in 1936. This is my personal home defense shotgun, by the way. It's the one I go to. I'm gonna load up 3 rounds. I got 3 targets. Let's see what this old girl will do. Not bad. Now, seeing as I fired my 3 rounds, I know this chamber's empty. So what I'm going to do is simulate a bad shell. Pretend I just cracked one in there. No bango. Now, on the older model guns, the Spencer and the 1893, you could just rack the slide again. And when that happened, you might have a hang fire, eject the shell. The shell may go off right over here by your face somewhere. As you can see on this gun, I dry fired it. No bango, no slide. The only way to get this to work, the gun knows if the shell has gone off, because under recoil, your hand will slide this slide forward. And all you hear is a click. Hear that little click? Now, you have to make a mental decision if the gun misfires to slide the pump forward and then back. That way you don't get a shotgun shell exploding in your face. Now back to the story. Where were we? It's 1898. They're cranking out 1 million of these things. Well, not literally 1 million yet, but they will get there. They're cranking these things out like crazy, and America goes to war in the Philippines. Now, this particular war was a little different than anything America had fought. America was used to fighting on the plains, Indians that were at the best wearing buckskin, sometimes shirtless, on horseback, where the shotgun had proven very effective. When they got to the Philippines, they were going up against something else entirely different. There were these people. Some people say they were souped up on drugs. Some people say, it was a religious fervor. But what I believe was, these warriors, before they would go into battle, would take strips of cloth, wrap them very tightly around themselves, basically mummify the larger parts of their body. And what that did was, if they got hit and started bleeding, they would not bleed out very fast. The United States had just adopted the 30 caliber Krag-Jorgensen rifle and a 38 caliber double action Colt pistol, which both turned out that even when they got through these wrapped layers, they mostly didn't make an exit wound, and the people were not bleeding to death very fast. They may have been on drugs, definitely hyped up on religious fervor. They were Muslim, by the way, contrary to popular belief. They were Muslim, and they would keep attacking, and what you had was everyone that had this 38 caliber pistol was winding up getting killed by a spear. They would find a dead man here with 6 bullet holes in him and a dead man here with a spear stuck through him. Now, we Americans, we don't like for things like that to happen to our soldiers. So they said, what are we going to do? Well, first of all, they got rid of that 38 caliber pistol and went back to the original 1873 and 45 Colt. And that pistol, even in a black powder loading, which by then they were loading smokeless, even in a black powder loading, that pistol packs a wallop when you get a 45 caliber 250 grain bullet over 40 grains of black powder, basically a small rifle round out of a pistol. That helped with that, but the Krag-Jorgensen was still having trouble. So then comes our second hero of this story, a man named Blackjack Pershing, who was in charge. He had seen these new pump-action shotguns on the market, and he said he wants one of these with a few modifications. First of all, take that off, because we can't fight in the jungle with that long of a shotgun. We want something you can carry, you can turn, you can slam it, you can slam fire it, you can take care of the problem. And it did. As a matter of fact, there's several accounts of these men who were just a few months before had been charging in on a death charge, killing American troops. Well, now they're charging in on a death charge and getting dropped in their tracks by double-aught buckshot out of this. It worked so well that Pershing took it to Mexico a few years later. Took it to fight Pancho Villa. Once again, the gun proved itself well. The thing is, Mexico is a warm, dry climate. Let me show you something. This is a modern shotgun shell. That shotgun shell will work in any weather, in any condition. It's plastic with a high brass hull. Now let me show you something else. This is the shotgun shell. Basically, this is a bird shot, but that's pretty well akin to what they would have been using up until the 1960s. The trouble with this shell is it's made out of paper, whereas this is made out of plastic. And when paper gets wet, or paper gets in the mud, or even just, there was never an official shot shell carry pouch. So what they do, they took a few of these shells and they threw them in their pocket and they filled all their pockets up. If you fall on it, it deforms. If you bang it together, it deforms. Any kind of moisture or deformation of these paper shotgun shells makes them unfit for battle. Because when you get 5 of these things in the tube, or 6, and one of them's deformed, your gun is out of action. And like many John Browning guns, this is not a gun you want to be disassembling in the middle of a battle. To get those shells out of there, and if they're stuck and you can't use the buttons, you have to take the end cap off. These were the originals that they took to battle, were not takedown guns of any kind. They were solid frame, so the only way to get that thing out of there would have been to take that screw out, pop the end cap off, try to get them shoved out, and if your tube has any moisture in it, by the time you get back into the fight, you're going to have the same trouble again. So what it was proving was this was doing fairly well in dry climates. It was doing pretty good in jungles when it wasn't raining. It was definitely a man stopper. A few years later, after having proven itself so well down in Mexico, World War I begins. Pershing is the general in charge for the Americans. And of course, if he takes his boys to France, we're taking our baby with us. This is our gun. Unfortunately, France is not the same as Mexico. When you get into a trench where you're standing in knee-deep mud for a month on end, you're carrying these shells in your pocket, you're laying without shelter, you're charging across no man's land. These paper shells are gonna take some abuse. In late 1918, the problem was so bad, they decided to order full-hole brass shotgun shells, which probably would have fixed the situation. The only trouble was, peace were declared before they got there. Now, that's probably one of the few times you'll ever hear that it was a bad thing for anybody that peace was declared. But for the old Model 97, it wasn't too good a deal. It had basically proven itself well in dry climates and definitely proved itself well on night patrol in World War I. But this gun had a bad reputation among soldiers for being a jam-o-matic. So they put it to the side. Fast forward 20 years, and we're going into another war. And in this war, we weren't prepared. We had a great rifle, but we did not have enough weapons for World War II when we went in. So what did they do? They dusted off everything they had, and they still had 10,000 of these sitting around, at least. And so where they wouldn't necessarily give them to the troops right off the bat, they might give this to a National Guard unit, a prison guard, anything to free up that M1 Garand rifle to get it to the front. Because we can't have M1 Garands back here. We got to have them to the front. So it was doing its job pretty well. When suddenly, we're back in war in the Pacific, in the Philippines, in another jungle situation. The M1 Garand is a great gun, but it's a little long, and they're having the same trouble with people that are just fervent to win, and if they don't win, they're going to kill themselves. That means you're not going to get a psychological stop with a 30 caliber bullet should you shoot them and they don't go down. Once again, the United States calls on the Winchester 97 and the Winchester Model 12. In the Pacific Theater, they were used by Marines to great effect. The shells were a little bit better, still had some issues with the moisture, but for the most part, this gun was doing its job. Now that brings us to the subject of today's video, the Normandy invasion. Now, when it comes to the Normandy invasion, you will not see very many Winchester 97s in pictures. And there's a reason for that. Even though the Army has adopted them, the Navy has adopted them, the Marines have adopted them, most of these guns that were made, you got to remember, the guns they had, the guns they made, they're not able to crank out enough for everybody. Most of these guns go to the Marines. And for some reason, there's a notable absence of Marines in the biggest amphibious beach landing ever to take place in the history of the Earth. Now, some people theorize, maybe correctly, maybe not, that the fact that in World War I, the Marines had gotten a lot of credit, that maybe some of it should have gone to the Army infantry, that a man named Eisenhower, who was part of the Army infantry, thought, well, on this show, I'm going to make sure the infantry gets some credit. For whatever reason, the largest amphibious landing in the history of the world, and there's no Marines. Could be they're all in the Pacific. Could be this, could be that. Could be a conspiracy, who knows. But anyway, you're not going to see very many Winchester Model 97s. You'll see pictures of Winchester 12s. You'll see pictures of every other gun. We do know this gun was there, though. Matter of fact, it was probably taken from the Navy's reserves, because once you hit the beach and you're running across, first of all, you got to get all your heavy equipment through the water. You're going to be running through sand, which is not easy either. You're going to be ducking. This little light gun, probably with its ability to swing and maneuver, probably be a little better deal. And another reason is, even though the M1 Garand is a long-range rifle, and by far, if I was taking the beach in Normandy, I want an M1 Garand. The trouble is, the way the bunkers are set up, you can't see anybody to shoot back, even at long range, and you're taking fire. You can't shoot over the lip. You maybe bounce a few into them concrete bunkers and maybe get a ricochet hit. That's it. So the idea that this would not be long enough range gun for that conflict, here or there, because I don't believe the M1 Garand is going to get the job done either. Once you hit that beach, the only friend you have is God, and you better find some cover. Once you hit that shingle, don't stay there very long, you might die. Once you hit that shingle, you get a plan. Go across the rest of the beach, and when you get to the end, what do you find? The good old World War I trench, with a few improvements, such as concrete, things that even a rifle can't shoot through. It's going to wind around a little bit, and when you get down into that, you're going to be so narrow, 3 men can't pass, but this gun is just probably wide enough to swing around. Once you get past those trenches, you're going to wind up in a staircase leading up to several rooms, and when you get to the top, you're going to find machine gun nests. Now, if you ask me, this is where the shotgun comes into play. You're in a room the size of a large room in a house, less than 20 yards by a long shot. You're facing up against men on mounted machine guns that maybe they can turn them, maybe they can't. You're going to be standing there facing 5 or 6 men armed with 9mm pistols in a room. Yes, please, I will take the Winchester Model 12 with a side order of grenades, because that's what's going to get the job done. And it did, because there were a few Winchester, not Model 12s if I said that, Winchester 97s and Model 12s in those bunkers. Now, I'm going to give you, before we finish here, a small demonstration of what slam fire is and what it's capable of. So in conclusion, I have this 90-year-old gun, still my home defense weapon. I have these paper shells that are at least 50 years old. They've been in my collection for years. I collect them. I always said I'd never shoot them. I don't even know if they'll go off. I don't know if they'll jam. They could have gotten wet and disfigured, and I can't even tell it. But in honor of the 76th anniversary of D-Day, we're going to give it a try. 1 bird shot. 2 bird shot. 1 medium load. And this is kind of cool. I just want to show this to the camera. This is before the tight crimp. That's how you know when you're shooting buckshot. I'm going to save that shell for last. Now, no bang-o. Forward, back, paper shell. I'll never do this again with any of my paper shells, so let's see what I can't do to this. I'll probably miss, but here we go. And I did. But I'm just glad that paper shell went off.
Does have an interesting smell to it.
All right. Round 2. There we go. That paper shell went off. Where'd that go? You'll notice that does a little more smoking than what you would notice on a modern shell.
That.
All right. Still got one in the chamber. Peter's paper shell. 50 plus years old. That was because I short stroked it. Something you can do with these guns. All right. For the last one, I'm awfully proud of this shell. I've had it for a lot of years. Kind of hate to shoot it. I'm going to top load this gun. Simply shove it in the chamber, close it, and we're ready to go. Now, we're going to see how effective this paper buckshot shell is. It'll say, I want to say about 30 yards. Same for that pop bottle.
Oh, you hit it.
Now that was interesting. The pellets got there. The shell went off, but there was zero recoil. And that's not because that's how it was back in the day either. That's because something's wrong with that probably 60-year-old shell. I haven't even looked at it yet. Let's jack this shell out of here.
Did eject.
Everything looks fine. Could it be that this is one of those paper shells that got a little wet? Could it be that we just experienced something that the soldiers in World War I were deathly afraid of? Could be, because I'm no expert. The shells hit that bottle. I mean, the projectiles hit that bottle, but they didn't even move it, break it, or penetrate a hole. Could be there's a little something more to the story. Well, that's all we have for the Winchester Model 97. They're beautiful little guns. If you get one in good condition, still a viable home defense shotgun today. This is mine. And I just want to remember all the men that may have died on that beach, or in World War I, or any war America's had, because all of them, from the Revolutionary War to Syria today, you'll still find a shotgun somewhere.